Greetings to you, warrior folk and fellow travelers of the Golden Path. It's been a while since I've done a video like this because we've been doing some DIY projects around the house and this room was essentially a dumping ground. Today's video is sponsored by Red Dragon. Red Dragon were kind enough to send me a pair of shin guards some time ago. I meant to do a review video a little bit earlier, but life just got in the way, so apologies to that, Red Dragon. So this video is really to talk about whether these shin guards, the Red Dragon shin guards, are still worth using and buying in 2024, soon to be 2025. And in short, yes.
My lungs taste the air of time blown past fallen sand.
The longer version, I'm going to explain why they're worth buying. So these are essentially reappropriated motocross gear. When you bend them open, they actually say motocross appliance. Now that doesn't mean that they're useless for HEMA, because they're actually very good. And I don't know what it's like elsewhere in the world. In the UK, Red Dragon is ubiquitous. It is the sort of go-to beginner's gear, and a lot of intermediates and advanced fighters still use a lot of their gear because it is decent. Now, these shin guards are excellent for a number of reasons, and I want to go over why. Speaking of which, have you seen a certain video where a certain person tests these out? Well, if you haven't, I suggest going and watching that, because we actually stress test these particular leg guards against me with with mixed results. That's excessive. Oh! 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 Yeah, that hurt. Dude, I thought. Oh! The results of which will sort of flavour how I'm going to talk about them today. So I like these. I've used these since I started HEMA, and I'm still using them to this day, and there's good reason for it. So essentially, they are hard plastic with a sort of like thin-ish foam backing, which you can pull out because it is attached by these poppers, so you can wash them and keep them nice and hygienic and clean. They're affordable. They aren't very expensive at all. Obviously, these ones are free. But if you have a look at their pricing online, they are very reasonable indeed for a pair of shin guards, which will essentially last you your entire HEMA career unless you move on to another brand. So they are essentially articulated leg armor, and unlike sort of medieval armor, the knee plate doesn't sit on the outside of the leg, it sits on the inside, which I find quite good. There's nowhere for the sword to really catch and pull away the knee guard, so that's a big positive. There's also no gaps around, on top or underneath the knee guard, so your knee is more or less completely encased in armor. I'll do a sort of close-up on my legs in just a minute to talk about the bits that I'm talking about. I'll superimpose it over what I'm talking about here, so I don't have to stop my train of thought. But essentially, the pros I find is the armor is very protective. It can take a real beating, as I've shown with my video, getting hit with some pretty substantial blows from some pretty substantial gear. And that's all you can really ask for from a pair of shin guards, is if I get hit on them, is it going to bust my leg? And if the answer is no, they've done their job. And so that's in for pros. They are very solid in terms of construction. And when they do break, eventually, and it is known to happen, I find the main areas that break are the pop rivets. And normally, because sweaty people in gear, they end up rusting out and corroding. But that doesn't mean that they're then out for the count. What really happens is these pop rivets here deteriorate. And normally it's these ones here, the bottom ones, that break and they come off. So all I've been doing is essentially taking a small knife, poking a hole sort of just here, and then threading a cable tie between those two holes through the existing hole here, and then reattaching it with a cable tie. And my old pair, which I haven't actually got here to show you because I've lent them out, are basically held together with cable ties, hopes and dreams. They are now more cable tie than actual metal, so they can just be repaired and repaired and repaired, and they'll end up looking kind of orcish or Mad Max-ish, but the point is they're still functional. The plastic has never failed, I've seen, and the interior liner just goes on and on and on. Likewise, the elastic straps I've never seen fail. So in terms of construction, solid, absolutely fine. Coverage. Now, when you put these things on, you're probably not going to be able to see all of that because the camera cuts off. But essentially, from in terms of how it protects your knee, as you can see there, the coverage is pretty complete. The padding comes round to sort of about here. So blades coming in at an oblique angle to the sort of backs of your knees may get you. Same as like the backs of the calves and the sides of the thighs. So anything that's coming in from this angle here, so if you're stood side onto your opponent, is likely to get you. Front on, essentially you're covered. So your thigh is covered, the top of your knee and the bottom of your knee, and there's basically the part of you that you really want to cover up, your knee, is covered entirely, okay? So you don't need to worry about your patella, you don't need to worry about all the squishy, painful, non-muscly bits around the bony part of your knee, because that is entirely encased in this plastic. And that's the main priority for a piece of leg armor, is to protect your knees, because those are, when they're damaged, it can be a real problem. You can take hits to the thighs because it's a big muscle and it will bruise, but it's not likely to cause you long-lasting damage. Likewise, the shins, unless you get one right on the shin bone, that can be a problem. But, you know, again, it's a fractured bone and it will mend itself over time. However, damaging to knee tendons and ligaments and the patella itself, that can be life-changing injuries, and you don't want that. So, knee protection, really, really good. In terms of sort of how they sit on you, they're comfortable. They're comfortable bits of kit. The strapping isn't invasive. You don't have to strap them on so tight it cuts off circulation to your leg. Literally, the only issue I find is that in using them, because, and I'm going on to this in terms of coverage in just a second, because of where they sit and how far down your leg they actually go, I find that in the middle of fights, and oftentimes when I'm moving around a lot, it'll go from sitting here, where it basically protects, up to about mid-thigh with the padding, just below that with the plastic, and it will shift down, and it'll just start sliding down and down and down, but it'll stop about there. So it still covers your entire knee, and it still means that you can articulate your leg without interfering with it at all. But what happens is then, you know, it's moved down, the top of your thigh is now exposed, which isn't a problem if, like me, you're using like a skirt or a longer gambeson, because that covers the rest of it. Or if you've got padded trousers on as well, shouldn't be an issue. But the main issue is essentially with what we do with sort of thrashing your leg around and jumping around, it will slide down. But that being said, it's an easy fix and you're done, okay? And the only problem I was finding with doing that is when you pull this, the pops would basically undo and you'd pull off this piece. But all I did was a bit of super glue in those and then reattached it, and now it's fixed, so it's not a problem anymore. And one of the things that 610 HEMA does, because he wears thigh pads with strapping, is he takes this back strap and he attaches it into his strapping, and his don't slide at all. Now, with that being said, coverage. So we've talked about, in terms of on the front, everything from about mid-ankle up to about mid-thigh is completely covered. Side on, obviously, back of your thigh is exposed, back of your legs exposed, back of your knee joints are exposed, and the back of your calf is exposed. There's not really much you can do about that without having a fully encased piece of armor. So for forward facing, taking impacts, and a little bit to sides, but not necessarily from like completely from the side or from behind, it covers you for most of what you can expect. And in terms of receiving thrusts, cuts, bashes, kicks, anything like that, I've not really had any situations where I've been injured while wearing these on a part of my leg that was covered by them. Sometimes if you get caught with like a blow that hits the kneecap really sort of like shallowly, so it catches it about there, it can spin the armor around. Obviously, you know, you're not in a fight to the death, so, you know, you just call hold and you put it back to where it's supposed to be and you're back in the game. And the main issue, I think, for me, out with it sliding down, but as I've said, that's an easy fix and, you know, can be mitigated. I'm sure if you were wearing the same trousers, you could put a piece of Velcro on both sides of the underside of here and the trouser, and it would stick fine. The main issue is shin coverage, essentially ankle coverage. So as you can see here, it stops here. That's when it's fully worn properly, it stops here. And what that means is that your ankle and lower shin are exposed. And as you saw in the video that I did, if you watch that, that can be a real issue, and it can really freaking hurt, especially if the person throwing those hits is 6-0 HEMA, because he just seemed to be gunning for those shins. Yeah, that hurt. So that's the only thing that really loses its marks in terms of like protective quality is the ankle. And arguably, if you were wearing a tall boot, you know, like a combat boot or something, that would be mitigated somewhat. And to be honest, like, you want the armor there on the off chance someone accidentally throws a hit at your ankle, because, you know, unless you are fighting with a group of sadists, they're not actually trying to hit you in the ankle. It's an you know, an unideal place to hit someone. So I don't think it's a game changer. It's not something that would mean that I just wouldn't wear these, because it's like, oh my god, if I get hit in the ankle, I'm screwed. It's like, but you know, it's not likely it's going to happen unless the person you're fighting is obsessed with doing Gazelans and they can't do it to save their life. But it is something that if you are looking at armor in terms of its overall protectiveness, there are other armors out there that will cover you right down to the ankle in a better way, but not these ones in particular. So I think if I was going to give them a rating out of 10, I'd give them a solid 6 or 7. Losing points literally only because of there's armor out there which covers you around the back of the calf, has sort of flared bits on the knee joint to protect you from those sort of like oblique cuts coming in from the side, and obviously covers you down to the ankle, and actually has bits that flare out down to the ankle so they can fit round a shoe. And that's, you know, these are what they are, and that's not taking anything away from Red Dragon. I'm not saying don't buy them. I think for what they do and for what they're designed for, they do really, really well, and you could do a hell of a lot worse. And obviously, if you're just fighting in just a kneecap, you know, you're at much more risk of leg injuries than if you're wearing a pair of these. I think the main thing these things have over most other armored gear for your legs, and I said at the beginning, is the affordability aspect. It can't be overstated how people coming into HEMA, it's like with any sport, the introductory money you put down on all the gear you're going to use, it can be obscene. You know, it can be a hell of a lot of money. And not everyone has the kind of cash to splash out on, you know, like spares armor, you know, and not everyone has the money to buy some of the fancier gear that's out there. So these ones, I think, cover you up, they protect you, they allow them in tournaments because they know that they work. And it's just one of the things that if you want to make sure that your shins are safe and you want to be able to start HEMA, and even if you've been doing it for a while, to continue doing HEMA with your legs pretty much guaranteed safe, Red Dragons all the way. That's pretty much it, really. That's all I wanted to say. I'm sorry it's taken so long for me to actually do this added video, which was supposed to have come out just after the destruction test video, because that would have made a lot of sense. But, you know, life just did a thing. So here we are. Now, Red Dragons. Are they worth it in 2024 going on 2025? Absolutely. And if you are a club runner, like an instructor like myself, and you are looking to recommend gear to your incoming members, just give them this. It works just fine. And even for a club, they do club discount, obviously, if you didn't know that. If you're a club in the UK, Red Dragon will, if you sign up with them and let them know what your club is called, they will give you a code and a membership, and all of your members can have a discount, a certain percentage discount off all of the Red Dragon gear. And it just makes the requirements for access that much lower. And it just means that people can come and join in and they can have fun with us without having to spend an absolute ton of money. Incidentally, Red Dragon also say Regenier swords on there. They sell all the nylons you need. They sell masks. They sell jackets. They sell pretty much everything. And they sell a lot of things like from spares. And Regenier obviously comes from Hungary, I believe. And you'd have to pay an import tax to order it from the manufacturer. So they've already covered that, and you're just paying for the product. So it's a really good company. I've had some great communications with them. I really like the guys. Obviously, I did my review in the past about the Dreadnoughts, which if you haven't checked out, go and check that out, because, you know, I still use those after the repairs, and I'm sure that they will keep getting better as time goes on. They make good products, and you could go a hell of a lot worse than a pair of shin guards from Red Dragon. Okay, that's all from me today. Stay safe on the path, enjoy fencing, look after one another, make sure everyone's wearing the proper gear, and long live the fighter.